At some point in our life, each of us does it. We take a test. Whether it's multiple choice, true false, essay questions, or fill in the blanks. Tests are an important part of growing up and showing the world what we know. Taking tests is always challenging. Everybody gets nervous. Everybody wants to do well. Everybody runs into questions they can't answer. Knowing the material to be tested is the first and most important step. But there are other things you can do before, during, and after a test that will help you master your uncertainties and improve your performance.
Wondering what those tips might be? Well, there's strategies. You can think of them this way. Silly cows underwater can't swim. Sounds like nonsense, right?
It's not nonsense. It's actually something called a mnemonic device, which means the first letter of each word represents something you should remember. It works like this. Silly stands for study the material. If you think you know everything, review the glossary of your textbook. Cows stands for clear your mind. That means sleep well, eat well, start your day off right, and be positive. Under stands for use your eyes, meaning look quickly at the whole test when you get it. What will be asked of you? What looks hard? Estimate your time. As you do the test, read each question and all instructions completely. Ask for help if you need it. Pay attention to any graphs and charts provided. And always, always look to make sure you're answering each question in the correct space. Water is simple enough. It stands for watch the clock. That means don't lose track of the time. Can't stands for check your answers. Make sure they are filled in properly and that your choices are reasonable ones. And go with your instinct. Your first answer is probably right. And finally, swim means skip what you don't know. So, if you have to guess, wait until you've completed the entire test. Then go back to the ones you're stumped on. That's it. Silly cows underwater can't swim. In the next few minutes, you'll hear about a variety of strategies and techniques for different types of testing and answering formats. These formats are the kind typically encountered on state and national standardized tests. This video consists of 4 sections: before the test, during the test, specific tips and strategies, and after the test. Each section includes a summary, and at the end of the video, you will also find an appendix. If you are watching this video with your students, you may want to pause the program when you see this symbol on screen. What would you tell somebody who is getting ready to take a test and never taken one?
Do your best and read the question carefully.
I was telling her to calm down, don't worry about it, because if you do bad, you can always try the next time.
Just to concentrate really hard and not talk a lot.
I really feel you need to talk to them about the test. Tell them what it's about. And if you know why you're giving it to them, tell them why you're giving it to them. Because I feel it's something, especially with young children, and they've heard so much about testing. They know testing is important. So to let them know they're being tested, why they're being tested, is, I think, very important.
You look at the number sentence and then you try to figure out the answer.
Test taking cannot be started in June or in April when the tests are actually given. I think it's something that has to start right from the beginning of school. It has to be a regular occurrence to children. They have to see all different kinds of tests. They have to see tests where they have to fill in the bubbles. They have to see true, false. They have to see multiple choice. They have to see open-ended questions, so that when the actual standardized tests come down, that it's not something new and foreign and different to them. They feel more comfortable with it. It's almost like an old friend. You know, I've seen you before. I can handle this. This doesn't scare me.
What a lot of teachers do to help their kids to get ready for important tests is that they have a set of sample exercises or activities that kids can engage in, actually participate in during instruction, that will allow kids to zero in on what's going to be expected of them.
Sometimes the teacher gives out practice tests before the actual test, and I feel better doing those in class.
You don't have to give them material that they will get on the standardized test, but what you give them is actually a time where they get a chance to sit down with either a timer or a clock with pencil and tell them that this is something you have to do by yourself.
The way I teach the children how to take a test, it becomes incorporated in everything they do throughout the school year. It improves their self-esteem. So when the real test comes, they feel good about themselves. They don't feel like a failure.
There are many different ways to help students prepare for testing. The best place to start is with the task of bubbling. For many students, it's not as simple as it looks.
Maybe 10 years ago when I was teaching first grade and they were doing this type of a test where they read the passage and then the questions were followed and they were to fill in the bubbles, they had no idea. They were underlining and coloring in letters at the top as opposed to filling in those bubbles, and it made me aware that they need to know how to do this format as opposed to this being counted as they don't know how to read.
I really talk to them about how they bubble. I show them. I usually demonstrate on a dry mount board and just watch them bubble. If you make a mistake, erase it. Remember, I gave you 15 minutes. Time's up.
Well before the test is given, teachers may want to stimulate a whole class discussion about what the test will involve.
Multiple choice questions. And what do we do when we have a multiple choice question?
We explain to them why we're preparing them. It's a lifelong process. It's not just a one-shot deal of taking this test and sinking and swimming.
Another way to help students prepare is to give them exposure to short answer questions. Whether it's through journal activities or classroom discussions, short answer questions are increasingly important on standardized tests.
Children are looking much more critically at what they're reading and what they're discussing. They're much more focused. They are writing much more. They are restating the questions and the answers. They're giving good topic sentences. They know that they need to give 2 to 3 detailed sentences. They do that on a regular basis. When they come to these open-ended tests, they attack it the same way. They see the problem and they go right for it.
Other things teachers can do include encouraging students to review the glossary in their textbook. These key terms make great flashcard activities.
You can tell me what a numerator is.
And don't forget, teachers are not the only ones who can help students do well. Parents play a very important role too.
I think parents can help children prepare for testing by encouraging them to try to do their best. And what we try to do is send home a letter telling parents not to say, I want you to pass the test. That's not the way to encourage your child.
I even call some of the parents where I feel that there might be a problem or a problem is currently transpiring at the home, so that when they come in and take the test that their mind is clear.
One of the biggest things parents need to remember is to get their children here on time. I think time is an important factor. If you know the test is starting at 9, don't throw your kid in the door at 5 minutes to 9 and expect him to be ready and prepared and calm. Get him here.
What we need to do in order to help kids understand and prepare for the tests they're going to take is that they need to know what they're facing, what they're up against, you know. They need to know what kinds of achievement targets they're going to be called upon to deliver on. They need to know what kind of exercises they're going to face. They need to know how the results are going to be used. They need to be partners in the process. And one of the problems that I've seen over the years with kids and tests is that they often feel more victimized by it than helped by it. And we need to counter that kind of stuff.
So, before the test, give your students opportunities to do timed practice tests. Provide exercises where they can practice bubbling. As the test approaches, conduct whole class discussions about what the test will be comprised of and how they can prepare. Provide numerous opportunities to practice short answer questions in journal activities or in class assignments. And, just prior to the test, give your students a chance to review the textbook glossary.
We are going to do the standardized test. You'll have 15 minutes to complete this section. Please turn your book over and turn to page 72.
When the test day actually arrives and the test actually begins, take a deep breath, settle yourself, then look at the test and see what is being asked of you.
Pencils down, please. Don't start yet.
they can tend to go fast, and when they go fast, misread exercises. They misread the items, the question, and then misread the response options because of the anxiety. This is particularly true right at the beginning when kids are taking a high-stakes test and there's a lot of adrenaline pumping and they're nervous.
Like, if you get nervous, you could just go so fast that you might skip one, and then you could get a wrong answer, too.
I think a lot of the pressure comes from schools, comes from their teacher, comes from their parent. What I try to do is really let children know that some of the questions you're not going to be able to answer. What I want you to do is answer the things you know how to answer.
As you look at the test, identify which sections look hard and which sections may require more time.
Anybody who's ever voted on a referendum question realizes that many times you go into the booth feeling that you want to support an item, but after reading the question, you're not sure whether you voted for or against it. And we need to teach children how to be discerning when they look at a question and look at the answers.
Because there are so many things that can interfere with the accuracy of the assessment in this regard due to kids' anxiety, it's important for them to go back and double-check their answers.
Why should you check your answers? You should check your answers because anything could go wrong. You could have added something wrong. You could have not read something you should have. Your answer could be way off when you think it's totally right. So you should always check your answers.
Here's another mnemonic phrase to help you remember different ways to check your answers. It's called RSVP. The R means, is my answer reasonable? The S means, does my answer make sense? The V means, verify that I read the question correctly. And the P means, especially for math tests where you have to show your calculations, did I include every step in the process? RSVP. One word of caution about checking your answers. Be careful about changing them. Studies show that most of the time, your first answer is the best one, and that going back and changing it is a mistake. So RSVP, but only change it if you are absolutely certain something is wrong. What do you do when you run into a question you can't answer?
I skip it. Or I would concentrate really, really hard to figure out the answers. If I don't know it, I would just skip it.
So, almost everybody runs into questions they have to guess on. Skip these and return to them at the end of the testing period. Besides, you may find the answer to the questions you don't know at some other place on the test. But be careful. Don't lose your place on your answer sheet.
Don't lose your spot in the answer sheet. It's really easy to do. You think you might know the answer, but when it's in the wrong bubble, you're really out of luck.
A kid ought to be going into a standardized test with a complete sense of what's coming. No mysteries, no surprises, and no excuses. And I think we do know how to do that, and I think more and more teachers are involving students in that way.
Here are the key points to remember during the test. Don't go too fast. Hurrying never helps. Always check your answers. Remember, R, S, V, P. When you find a question you can't answer, skip it and return to it later. And finally, be careful not to get lost on your answer sheet. More than other kinds of tests, math exams frequently ask students to show both the process of their thoughts and the correct answer. One way to prepare students is to review the content-related vocabulary in their textbook glossary. A solid understanding of these key terms will help students fully understand the questions and, if necessary, enable them to support their answers. This list is provided again at the end of the video. Another technique you can urge students to do is to look for opportunities to use mental math skills.
You know what mental math is, right? Well, it's when you use the skills in your head to get the answer right on paper.
If a question does stump you, think about using one of these strategies. Can it be estimated? Can you work backwards to find the answer? Would drawing a picture help? Is there a way to find the answer by solving a simpler problem? Practicing these strategies in pre-test exercises is a good in-class activity. When a problem calls for regrouping your numbers, be especially careful with the zeros. Always line up the digits correctly. whether it's the ones column or the decimal points. Multiple choice questions are the most common type of test given. When you don't know the answer for sure, see if you can eliminate 2 alternatives quickly. Then decide between the ones remaining. When you are uncertain, look at the question closely. Circle any qualifiers or key terms like greater than, less than, equal to, product, sum, or difference. These qualifier terms are listed at the end of the video. Short and long answer questions typically ask students to read a problem, plan a strategy for solving it, solve the problem, and explain their solution. In math tests, students generally have to show their computations, as credit is given for partial or incomplete answers. When doing a question that requires a written answer, don't cross out your mistakes. Always write clearly and erase words you want to change. If you want to find out more about how to approach traditional essay-type questions, consult the appendix at the end of the video. There, you will find a complete list of direction verbs and adjectives, which are very good for review with students as the test approaches. The most effective way to prepare students for true-false tests is simple memorization. There is no substitute for knowing what is right and wrong. When you can't remember information or do not know it for sure, assume the statement is true. Research has shown that there are generally more true questions on true-false exams than false ones. Read each question very closely. Sometimes a question may contain some true and some false information. Look for these modifier words in the question. Typically, the use of an extreme modifier like these indicates a question is false. At the same time, these qualifiers tend to make questions more likely to be true. Both of these lists are also provided at the end of the video. There are several different techniques you can draw on when facing a fill-in-the-blank test. First, look for which answer makes the sentence grammatically correct. Focus on how the sentence is actually written. Clues like the article "and" can tell you the correct answer must begin with a vowel. Sometimes, silently reading a question with its different answers may help you identify the correct one. Another technique is to concentrate on the number of blanks in the sentence and the length of space provided. These are also clues you can use to determine which answer will fit best. The best approach with matching questions is to use one list or column as a starting point and go through the second list to find the match. When you're looking for a match, go through the whole column before you make your decision. As you progress through the list, cross off items in the second column when you are certain of your decision. This answer sheet format is unique to several states in the country and is generally seen in elementary level math tests. Gridded response questions can be difficult for students because of the additional bubbling that is required. Before the test date, offer your class practice with a variety of gridded response questions. When practicing, show your students how to first print their answers in the boxes across the top and then to fill in the columns one at a time. Remind them to make sure that each circle is properly filled in. Otherwise, no credit is given for partial answers. You may also want to share with them the technique of using a ruler or piece of paper to focus on only one column at a time.
When we get the test results back, it's real important to continue to find those things that can help kids feel as though they're capable learners, identifying within the results where the students' strengths were, and then to the extent possible, honestly identifying where the shortcomings were too, so that out of that process there arises not a personal inference of giving up, of it's time to give up, but rather a personal inference of here are the goals that I need to strive for.
I like to see results from standardized tests so that I can evaluate what I've done with my children to see what areas they are doing well in. For example, I found that my children did very well on problem solving in math. They did poorly on computation. On the tests, they're not allowed to use manipulative. So I realized then that I had to do some drill and practice to get them to learn their addition and subtraction facts. So that was something I learned from the test.
When my children get the results from the test scores and they do well, they're so relieved. This entire sigh of relief goes throughout my entire house, that they've actually done well on the test, and in this case, they were accepted to examination school.
In the past, testing was done more or less as a big scary thing. It was, we're having the big test day, and the children were supposed to have eaten and come to school having a good night's sleep, and I encourage that every day as an everyday thing. And I think if we make it more natural and more part of our day, part of our schooling, they'll be more relaxed about it and do better, hopefully.